Hello, folks, and welcome back to my channel, Neo Radical. My name is Daniel Campbell. I'm the host here, and on this channel, I like to give dramatic readings from novels that I published on Amazon. And right now, we're doing a dramatic reading of Penelope. For those of you who wish to purchase a copy of this, whether physically or digitally, just check at the link in the description. That'll take you to my Amazon author page, and there you'll see other works that I published, and you can also purchase those. Those are also available for purchase as well. If you're interested in other stories, you like what you hear, then definitely, God willing, I believe you'll like what you'll read from my other novels. So, just to give a recap from episode one, uh, basically that episode was talking about Penelope's origins. Her aspirations to be a police officer. Um, that she was trained by a sensei named Ruki, and Ruki passed away. And Penelope, she wanted to use the skills that he taught her, particularly in swords fighting, uh, to win a scholarship to go to college and eventually get a degree in criminal justice, to be a policewoman. So she qualifies in her local Kendo tournament in Namuoka. I mean, yeah, Namuoka. She wins and she goes to the national tournament in Edo, and she wins the Golden Shinai. But shortly after she wins, she gets abducted um, by some of the mafia there, and they wanted to kill her because they believe that, and the people who abducted her, they are the Japanese mafia, but this particular guy, he's a positive. Okay, and a positive are an extremist group of basics that want to do away with all negatives altogether. And he told Penelope the reason why he kidnapped her was because, look, if women are making advancements in this country that's supposed to be male dominant, that opens the gateway to Sugois. So just when he was about to attempt to murder her, these two intermediate assassins come, and one of them kills all the people in a vehicle and is about to kill Penelope, but a female Sugoi agent of the imperial government rescues her, and uh, she almost gets killed by the other agent that was sent to kill that Bob person. And Penelope helps that agent. She comes to a rescue, and they both are able to survive the attack. And towards the end, that agent, she commends Penelope and basically gives her a blessing, saying that, I think you're going to do great things in this country if you become a policewoman. So, episode two starts where that leaves off, and let's begin. Chapter 5. 7 years later, along with several Kunian police, I'm sorry, Penelope, along with several Kunian police officers, escorted a diverse group of basic female fashion models up the corporate tower stairwell in the capital city of Edo. She, as well as the other officers, dressed formally in a red kagoji and black hakama. She painted her lips red, and she had her hair pinned up in a bun the size of a melon. Two things she found completely repulsive. Folks, I'm just going to let you know I'm going to try my poor attempt of an Eastern European accent, just to get more into my characters. I'll be using other accents too. So if you don't like them, please forgive me. Hopefully you do. But here we go. I hate when we have to be formal, thought Penelope in her heart. She helped lead the group of beautiful women up to the glossy amber wooden penthouse floor. A woman flirted with a male officer already posted there. The woman had long, straight black hair with bangs and a skin tone nearly as black as coal. Excuse me. Penelope tapped the device in her ear with her leather-gloved fingers. I don't remember a toxin being included with the cosmetic staff up here. Repeat, Officer Popova? A man's voice crackled on the radio. The Sugoi, a toxin. Her skin has a pearl scent flare. How was this missed, Arata? Oh, that would be Lydia, said the man in the radio. She's a stylist. We were told the original got sick and had to be replaced. Penelope watched Lydia and the infatuated guard slip into a room behind them. She rolled her eyes. The four remaining leading officers stood beside two doors in the hallway, as the rest of them split the women into two groups. As Penelope stood within the doorway observing the traffic, she noticed Lydia leaving the room alone. The toxin closed the door, looking this way and that. A green-like mist escaped the door as it was closed. Guard down! Exclaimed Penelope. Hold your breath! Penelope unsheathed her katana, taking a deep breath of her own. Now! Yelled Lydia. Penelope covered her nose and mouth as the toxin emitted a green, rancid mist from the pores of her arms and other extremities. It came sudden and heavy, choking the guards in front of her. Burning tears rolled down Penelope's cheeks as Lydia pushed her way past the other two officers. She held the edge of her sword to the ground, rubbing her eyes. Some of the women in the room behind her screamed. A cold, smooth hand ripped out her earpiece. Listen up, commanded Lydia. We're the Bangs, and your tower's under our control. The models screamed. Oh no! Holly! One of the women sobbed and pointed toward the open closet. Penelope's blurred eyes followed the pointing finger. A woman laid still on the ground. Quiet! Shouted the toxin. Penelope jumped at the sound of 3 gunshots. You girls want to end up worse off than that stupid stylist? Keep screaming! Penelope rubbed a blurry focus into her eyes, enough to focus on Lydia holding a woman at gunpoint. Unbeknownst to the kidnapper, it was not Oksana, the intended target, she was holding, but the girl's best friend, Bazurakan. The pair of Asian brunettes looked nearly identical in build, features, and height, but the decoy had a flesh-tone makeup to cover up her butterfly tattoo just below her right wrist to better, excuse me, let me read that again, I got a little jumbled. The pair of Asian brunettes, Bazurakan and Oksana, looked near identical in build, features, and height, but the decoy had flesh-tone makeup to cover up her butterfly tattoo just below her right wrist to better sell her act as her friend. The toxin tapped the stolen earpiece now sitting in her own ear. Listen up, Edo's finest. This is the Bang speaking. We've got your entitled brat Oksana with a chopper waiting for us on the roof. She shook the girl with a tight grip on her collar as she backed away toward the door leading outside. You tell the ambassador we'll give him the account number to wire us the $50 million once we get airborne. If you send anyone after us, anyone, we will send his daughter back down these steps in pieces. The toxin stopped just outside the door into the hallway, still holding her young hostage at gunpoint. She turned her gun on Penelope. Don't be a hero, princess. The toxin tilted her head at the open doorway. Outside where I could see you. Penelope complied and followed him with her hands raised. As she stepped outside, a fair-skinned brunette in a platinum sleeveless trench coat came out of the doorway ahead. Lydia shoved the child hostage to her. Tell Camilla to get the chopper ready. As the frightened girl and her captor climbed the stairs to the roof, the toxin turned her gun and her intense ocean blue eyes back on Penelope. And the Emperor does not excuse me, I'll repeat myself. And the Emperor doesn't arm us with guns because, thought Penelope to herself. She then whispered, Emmanuel, help us. She grabbed hold of the thick brown pin holding up her bun. Hey, Lydia shouted as she got off a round. Penelope spun to her right, pulling the pin from her hair. The whizzing bullet came an atom's length from grazing her cheek. Turning around, she threw it at Lydia's chest. The toxin screamed when the pin made contact, firing off another round. She shook as electricity spread throughout her body. After letting off a huge puff of green gas, Lydia collapsed with a moan to the floor. Penelope turned away from the fumes and shook her head, massaging her tense scalp and neck. She grabbed her earpiece from Lydia's ear, wiped it off, and placed it back in hers. "Lydia's down, Arata," said Penelope. After grabbing the gun, she looked back toward the women lying outside of the closet. Looked back toward the woman laying outside the closet. "Is the stylist alive?" "Holly's breathing," answered one of the models. "Could one of you get me a damn towel?" Penelope tapped her earpiece again. "Lydia subdued the stylist, but she's okay. A member of the Bangs posed as a model. She ran off with our young decoy. Did Ensign Yamato know some of them were Sugois?" Penelope checked the pulses of her downed colleagues, including the one Lydia had seduced. As she straightened, a model handed her a white damp towel. She wiped the lipstick from her mouth, then tapped her earpiece again. "All the guards are out, but alive." Penelope balled up the towel and threw it hard at the toxin's head. "Is the real Oksana safe, Popova?" Arata's voice came through the tiny speaker, worried for the ambassador's daughter, obvious in his voice. Penelope glanced up at the women and spotted the shaken and very young Kunian girl. "She's safe. Let me consult command." Penelope stood outside the doorway, sheathing her sword. Oksana approached her. "Is Bazurikam safe?" Oksana asked, worried for her body double creasing her brow. "Don't know." A guard behind her moaned. Penelope turned around and helped sit him up against the wall. "You're free to move them downstairs," said Arata. "The bottom floors are clear." "What about Bazurikam?" Penelope bit the words off. "The ambassador's daughter is the priority, and who we're ordered to protect. But Oksana is standing in the hallway alive as we speak." "Forget about Bazurikam for now, Popova. She agreed to be the decoy. Once Oksana was safe, we were here to rescue Bazurikam if there was time. That was the plan. Oksana is safe. I repeat, safe." Penelope noticed the once sitting colleague rising to his feet and attending to one of the other officers, who was moaning and moving his head. Bracing herself against the footsteps from the stairway behind her, she glanced back as more officers arrived. She sighed, removing her hand from her sword's hilt. "The plan has changed," continued Arata. "We can't risk any more men on our end. There were never meant to be this many casualties, if any. Why? Did you all not consider the Bangs a threat because they were posh-dressed kidnappers? Or because they're all posh-dressed female kidnappers? Popova, I'm going after them," she interrupted. Penelope pulled out her earpiece and ran up the stairs, ignoring the guards calling after her. Once she made it to the top balcony step and crept through the roof door, she identified 4 women standing by a double-decker bus-sized helicopter. One of the women, an intermediate, held her phone out for a group selfie, while one of the others held the frightened hostage, Bazurikam, at gunpoint. Suddenly, Penelope felt an intense pressure around her long, slender neck, as if someone had her in a chokehold. But when she touched her own throat and shoulders, there was just nothing there. "Come to join us, beautiful?" A disembodied woman's voice sounded in her ear. Penelope jerked her head upward. "A transparent," said Penelope. "Ah, got it on the first try. I guess dumb blondes are a myth after all." Her captor's pale violet arms materialized before her. Penelope felt the woman's hand dig within her vest. jeered the transparent. She pulled out Penelope's gun from the inner pocket where it had been stashed. Can have you noble Edo cops cheating. Lord help us, prayed Penelope in her heart. Hey, Camilla, yelled the transparent. The redhead in the black catsuit and thigh highs looked up. What should we do with our guest here? More should be coming. Kill her! Exclaimed Camilla. We need to get going. Penelope's stomach tightened. She dug into one of the pockets of her black waist belt. Though her captor loosened the hold on her neck, the transparent's arm still applied pressure to her throat. Said the woman. I've never had to kill anyone before. Penelope stiffened as an icy grasp squeezed the edges of her pounding heart. That's her hand, she thought. I guess a heart attack is the quickest way, said the transparent. Eh, Goldilocks? Penelope released several metal spheres from her belt. What's that? Asked the transparent. A concussion, answered Penelope. Penelope took a deep breath, and tear gas immediately spewed forth as the small spheres hit the floor. The transparent gagged and coughed, loosening her hold on Penelope. She checked her captor with her rear end, hitting her so hard the woman's chin bounced off her back. Penelope followed with a hard spinning elbow to her jaw, sending the transparent flying face first down the flight of stairs she just climbed. Penelope jumped out of the doorway, gasping for air. She let the cool autumn wind alleviate the choking sensation. Hope I don't have to deal with gas ever again, she thought. Gazing ahead, she saw Camilla signal, with a tilt of her ginger head, for one of her remaining companions to step forward. The same woman who took Berseracam from Lydia sashayed her way. The thug grabbed the hilt of her sword hidden within her platinum coat. Eyes locked on Penelope. Her round almond eyes tagged her as a kuni. The Kunian stopped several inches from Penelope. Her eyes squinted with the broad red stripe painted over them. Her eyes squinted within the broad red stripe painted over them. She gasped. Penelope gasped. Her eyes mushroomed like a bomb, a grin spreading across her face. Penelope Popova, proclaimed the Kunian. The first and sole female Golden Shinai in the flesh? You'll be the first blood my blades ever spilt. Penelope's blood ran cold of the Kunian's exuberance. For a moment, all that stirred was their hair, flapping in the violet wind. The Kunian's eyes glittered ever stronger under the brushing bangs of her bobbed hair. The Kunian withdrew her blade as swift as light, almost slashing it across Penelope's chest. But with near equal speed, Penelope repelled it. Their swords held fast. Instead of the thug's blade having the silver shine of steel or titanium, it had a glossy gleam. Within the blade's thin, transparent surface coating was a black and gray checkered pattern. Penelope raised her hairless brows and gulped. Carbon fiber. Catching her stare, the Kunian smirked. She flurried Penelope with many near-invisible slashes and stabs. Penelope struggled to repel and deflect them, but she sensed she was only being loosened for a fatal strike. Lord bless me to be fast enough to resist its coming, said Penelope. Prayed Penelope in her heart. In what seemed like slow motion, the Kunian drew her blade back for a thrust. Penelope's arms were still raised from blocking her last strike. The light weight of carbon fiber gave her opponent a deadly edge when it came to speed. Penelope lacked the quickness to block the thrust, but a sidestep could give her a proper evasion. Penelope dodged the strong stab. The Kunian almost stumbled. Penelope spun around and hacked the blade out of her hand to the steel paneled floor, rendering her off balance. Before the woman could regain her footing, Penelope grabbed Penelope grabbed her black scalp and planted her face into the floor. She stood from her unconscious victim and looked across at the remaining thugs. The giant woman far opposite Penelope grinned. She was dressed like Camilla, except her catsuit had a thick black fur collar with matching fur-trimmed gloves. Her powerful trunk-like legs catapulted her several feet into the air. Penelope could dodge the giant woman's landing, but she glanced down at the fallen woman beside her. She won't be able to, thought Penelope. She couldn't leave her as a defenseless casualty. Penelope sheathed her sword and snatched the woman in her arms, tossing her over her shoulders. She was able to get an inch out of the way before the giant woman landed behind her like an earthquake. Penelope tripped from the impact, and the unconscious kuni rolled off her shoulder. The intermediate's hand grabbed her leg with an unrelenting grip. Within a heartbeat, Penelope found herself dangling upside down from the giant woman's grasp, the giant's other hand extending its claws within the glove. The intermediate smirked. Her large green eyes sparkled with malice under her flapping light brown bangs. These girls really take the group name quite literally, thought Penelope. Compassion is for the weak, mocked the giant woman. Penelope frowned. Thank God for that. Penelope swiftly unsheathed her sword, and with a hard slash against the woman's freckled face. The giant woman screamed as Penelope's leg dropped her in a tumbled heap. She hopped back to her feet. Because when I am weak, Penelope slashed the back of the intermediate's legs, buckling her to her knees. The intermediate turned to face her. A look of dread of pain to come filled her face. He is strong! Penelope Penelope lathered her with a barrage of slashes. With a long moan, the intermediate collapsed on the back of her sleeping comrade. As her last opponent's wounds healed within the tears of her clothes, Penelope looked back up at Camilla. The redhead grabbed an assault rifle from the floor of the helicopter behind her. Penelope's eyes widened. Fight this! Yelled Camilla. No! Screamed Berserkan. The young girl grabbed Camilla's arm, but the thug shoved her away. Camilla aimed at Penelope. Before the thug could get off one round, Penelope felt a strong gush of wind blow past, tossing a massive fold of her hair over her face, as if to shield her from her fate. She froze, the racket from the gun tricking her brain into flinching. Her jaw dropped. I haven't been shot. Not once, thought Penelope. Pushing her hair over her face, she saw a slender man pushing her hair out of her face, she saw a slender man standing a foot taller than the intermediate, holding a frightened Camilla by her throat. The redhead fired off every last bullet in her rifle to the floor. The empty gun slipped out of her gloved hand as the man pinned her to the helicopter. Sorry, guys, there we go. Her head inches beneath the rotating blades. His free hand quaked as claws slowly emerged from his gloved fingertips. Camilla fainted. The man, reprieved of his wrath, dragged Camilla by her collar as he stepped into the helicopter. While the helicopter's blades wound down, he came out of the helicopter and gently helped Berserkan back to her feet. The girl trembled, her face pale. The man kneeled beside her and spoke tenderly to her. He snapped his cloak and covered her with it. Holding Berserkan by the hand, he ambled toward Penelope. Penelope's eyes widened at the sight of his slow coming. The near-white complexion on the man's broad, vein-webbed, wolf-like face and the abnormal speed from his arrival suggested him to be a very rare Sugoi. Her stubborn fold of curls veiled her face again, leaving only her mouth exposed. For Yudo Yanahara, walking up to fully grown people as if they were wide-eyed 10-year-olds was something he never got used to. You okay, Officer Popova? Asked Yudo. He stopped just before her, towering over her by 4 feet. Her open mouth was all he could see under the dense blanket of blinding platinum curls fluttering over her eyes. She had yet to remove them. My word, what a beautiful crown, marveled the Loth in his heart. The flapping cloak of hair had to have flowed well past her waist. How do you know my name? Asked Penelope. His eyes widened at the sound of her deep guttural accent. And no, it's not as deep as mine, just to let you know. He smiled, however, tapping the device on his ear. I assumed you were, excuse me, I assumed you were the stubborn officer that went up here alone, against orders, to face these thugs, answered Yudo. They stared at each other. You're a Loth, yes? Penelope asked. Yes, he answered. I am a Loth. What's the Sugoi as rare as you doing in Asahi no Kuni? We've been a part of this country for centuries. I would argue you're more the anomaly, officer. A basic laying waste to an intermediate with just a sword is an uncanny feat. Penelope looked at the fallen giant beside her. She stooped down, caressing the silver jacket of the much smaller basic that still laid underneath her. Penelope stood. She finally stroked away her hair from her face, revealing a pair of the most startling ice blue eyes he had ever seen. He gulped from the spectacle. Well, I have Emmanuel to thank for that, said Penelope. Emmanuel? Is she a believer? He thought. The transparent back there was much harder to subdue, she continued. You defeated a transparent with just your katana? A basic? Well, even standard officers are armed with tear gas pellets. Transparents may be invincible when they hollow their molecular density, but they still have to breathe air like everyone else. The gas made enough to rest that I was able to knock her down the stairs. A believer of the same god he worshipped, a warrior, and one that seemed quite knowledgeable. Yudo was now very intrigued of her. Her stature was alluring. Altogether, she seemed a menacing, yet elegant lioness in human form. Officer Popova! Yelled a man from the stairwell. Lord help me. Penelope's whisper was so low that Yudo almost didn't catch it. She immediately turned around. A fuming Ensign Yamato and many guards came through the door and onto the roof. Wretched woman! Yelled Yamato. Oh, how trouble finds you! Penelope took a knee, bowing her head, as her furious ensign stopped in front of her. You could have compromised the whole operation! Yamato looked up at Yudo. Many apologies for Officer Popova's actions, Agent Yanahara. I expected more from her. I'm sure it was a hassle to subdue so many to rescue both her and Basurakan. I subdued only one person, Ensign Yamato, Yudo replied, calmly hiding a smile. What? Ensign Yamato frowned in confusion. Camilla was the only assailant I took down. You? Oh, there's no need for lies. You can examine the footage from her chest cam to validate the truth, interjected Yudo. I was delayed by an armed car theft nearby. By the time I arrived, both the basic and the intermediate had been downed by Officer Popova. Even the transparent downstairs? It should be in her chest cam. Yudo's mouth dropped as he stared back at Penelope, his expression harder to stone, while he shook his head. You and that god of yours. At ease. Penelope stood with a sigh. Cam! A young voice called from the open doorway. Oksana ran through the crowd of guards toward Bazirakan. The girls embraced. Yudo looked at Penelope. She returned the look with a gaze that carried a subtle beam. He winked with a nod. She blushed. Chapter 6. Penelope was asleep in her childhood bedroom in Gurun Furuzu when she was troubled by another dream. This time, She was a lamb with a platinum blonde hair. I'm sorry. She was a lamb with a platinum blonde wool. With platinum blonde wool. From a distance, she saw two herds of beasts on opposing sides fighting to get at each other. One herd was pink and the other blue. Between them were a team of animals of various sizes, restraining them from attacking each other. However, a giant copper cobra with golden eyes stood in between both herds, enticing them to fight. The Lord told Penelope, "Help rescue the herds from the cobra. Go, for I am with you." Feeling a glow of might within her chest, she galloped on her split hooves and charged. During her charge, four malicious wolves of diverse colors confronted her. One was purple, another blue. The third was white, and the final one was red. The Lord, however, had given her the might to defeat them, and defeat them she did. Once Penelope arrived at the copper cobra, her and some of the animals restraining the two herds fell on the large snake, killing it. With the death of the cobra, everyone vanished, except the four wolves who confronted her. Suddenly, a gray bear with emerald green eyes fell on the wolves and defeated them. The bear was about to end the red wolf, but out of pity, Penelope pleaded for the bear to have mercy and eat her instead. The bear released the whimpering wolf from its mouth and made its way to her. Penelope woke up in a huff, like before. Clasping her face with her hands, she tried interpreting the dream. "What does it mean, Lord?" she replied. Again he was silent. After waiting for over a minute, she got out of bed and headed for her parents' room. Making it to her father's side of the bed, she kneeled a few feet away. "Papa," she whispered. He stirred, still holding her mother. "Papa." Her father turned over and laid his eyes on her. "Well?" "I had a strange dream." Her father pulled off his sheets. Pulled off his sheets and kneeled beside her. "Is it like the one from 7 years ago?" Penelope shook her head. She explained the entire vision. After she finished, she glanced at her father. He seemed just as disturbed as she was. They kneeled in silence together for a good moment. "It's very troubling now," said her father. "I don't know what to say. If this vision is indeed from Emmanuel, he will make it clearer in time. In the meantime, let's pray that he answers it." Her father wrapped his arms around her, and both of them prayed. The following morning, Penelope laid on her bed, reading the news on her tablet. Twirling her coiled locks and swinging her legs, her wide, browless eyes finally landing on something that caught her attention. It was a story about a Western loth named Hanai Asumi, pleading guilty to premeditated murder of her late husband of 2 years, Hotaki Asumi, also a loth. "Nell," called her mother, "breakfast!" Penelope was lightning quick for anything that involved swordplay or combat, and usually food. But for everything else, even with speaking, her movements were drawn out like a sloth. By the time she moseyed into the dining room, her whole family was already there kneeling before their steaming food. "Well, it's back to eating raw food again," jeered her brother. Their mother slapped them on the shoulder. After Penelope kneeled at the table, everyone dished their food. They then bowed their heads, and her father blessed the food. The moment they started eating, the phone rang. After the seventh call, her brother shot up to his feet. "Who is this?" he grumbled, stomping away. Penelope took a sip of her tea. "Probably Ensign Yamato," she thought. Her brother came back and kneeled before his food. "Your boyfriend, Ensign Yamato's secretary, left 7 messages saying he has an urgent matter to discuss with you when you return to duty." "Mm-hmm," said Penelope. That man's awful," griped her mother. "He's too demanding. He couldn't calm, excuse me. He couldn't come down here himself and tell you? No, it's probably a ploy for me to go to him. Praise God I left my cell phone at home. It probably has 100 times the messages. Well, if it's urgent, don't you think you should go talk to him? Uh-uh. Vacation is vacation. Right, Papa? Amen, answered her father. Penelope opened her apartment closet. While combing her illustrious curls, she eyed her white police kagoji and the navy blue akami hanging beside it. Her eyes wandered to the platinum coat and black catsuit the authorities confiscated from the banks. She shook her head. Vixens have all the fun. Wish we'd come to work like that, thought Penelope. On the shelf above the Bang's clothing was the black fur she requested to be trimmed from the intermediate's glove and the collar of her catsuit. She then looked back at the jacket. Someday I'll ask Kasumi to stitch that on the collar. What a blessing to have a housekeeper with the skills of a seamstress. Penelope returned to work in uniform, refreshed and relaxed. She stopped in the doorway of Ensign Yamato's office. He sat behind his desk, a pensive look on his face. She took a deep breath and knocked on the doorframe. Ensign Yamato. Officer Popova. He motioned her to come in. Penelope stepped in and gave Yamato a deep bow. He frowned. Why didn't you return my secretary's calls? The messenger said the urgent matter was to be discussed when I returned for duty. Besides, I was on leave. The latter slipped out of her mouth. She expected a scowl, but to her surprise, he looked rather sullen. By the request of the Shogun, you are to report to Agent Chifu Kana Yuno's office for orientation at His Highness's palace by tomorrow morning. Penelope lowered her hairless brows. Me? Why? The Shogun was so impressed with the valor you showed with the sortie against the Bangs, he demanded you be transferred to the female division of the Imperial Sugoi Guard. In what capacity, if I may ask, Ensign? Yamato shot her a glare. As an agent. Penelope dropped her jaw. But I'm a basic. Ensign. How do I qualify? Subduing 3 Sugois with just your sword, a taser, and tear gas pellets more than qualifies you. Penelope raised her hands in refusal. Ensign Yamato, I can't accept this. You wish to refuse a request from the Shogun? Penelope was silent. One of their agents was murdered a couple of months ago. He feels someone of your skill set is good enough to fill the shoes of an intermediate. An intermediate? Are they crazy? Is this your doing, Emmanuel? Thought Penelope. You are to take today to clear out your desk and locker, then report to the Shogun's palace by 800 hours tomorrow. Yes, Ensign Yamato. Yamato stood and took a light brown bamboo sword off his stand from his desk. He held it out to her. Penelope stared at it, hiding her curiosity. She took hold of the sword. I am honored, Ensign. Penelope bowed, as did Yamato. Your old Shinai? My daughter's. Oh, I never knew you had a daughter. She gave it to you as a gift? She died. Leukemia. A tear fell down the old man's hard, withered face. Moved by his deep sorrow, Penelope embraced him. Through misty eyes, she saw a picture of his beautiful daughter on his desk. Suddenly, Penelope realized the offense she had committed and released him. She clasped her hands over her mouth and bowed deeply. My apologies, Ensign Yamato, said Penelope. I shouldn't have touched you without permission. Yamato waved his hand while shaking his head. Your impulsiveness I will greatly miss, Officer Popova. Do us proud. Penelope gave one last bow before walking out of his office. As soon as she stepped onto the floor, faces filled with eager jubilation surrounded her. They erupted in applause and bows. Penelope's cheeks warmed and she hid her face in her hands. She heard Yamato's door shut behind her. When she looked back, he had already closed the blinds. Someone placed a light hand on her shoulder. Excuse me. Don't mind him, said the woman. He hates goodbyes. Penelope's co-workers revealed a table of food, pastries, and beverages. They entertained her for a couple of hours before she started packing. Chapter 7. After her morning Bible reading and prayer time, Penelope followed the aroma of fresh fish to her kitchen. A young kuni woman with neck-length pink-dyed hair whipped eggs, a skillet sizzling on the stove. Penelope got on her knees at the wooden table. Smells good, Kasumi, praised Penelope. She salivated over the waft of sesame oil and chili powder in the air. It better, said Kasumi. I just got this chum salmon from the market this morning. Only the finest for Ito's finest. After everything was cooked, she put it on a plate and served it to Penelope. Off to the next client, said Kasumi, bending down to hug Penelope. Congratulations, by the way. You have to tell me how your first day went as an Imperial Guard. God willing, I will. I'll see you when I see you, said Kasumi. The sound of the front door closing marked the departure of her friend. Penelope prayed over her food and dove in. For almost an hour, Penelope drove up the winding forest roads in search of the Shogun's palace. According to her GPS, she was a minute away from reaching it. I expected to see office buildings instead of that castle, thought Penelope. Her navigation dinged, notifying her she'd arrived at her destination. Sure enough, she stopped a few yards from the white gravel road that led up to the very castle. Wow, the federal building really is a palace, thought Penelope. Painted red, it had golden window heads and black paneled thatched roofs for each of its stacked 5 stories. The whole complex was on a gray 30-foot high stone platform with a pair of large red steel doors at the entrance, surrounded by a golden gate. Penelope parked her hatchback coupe a few yards before a wooden guest sign on the gravel space in front of the palace. Grabbing her gym bag, she trudged to the gateway. She stopped before two intermediate men, decked in red armor, standing guard at the 2 doors. State your business and purpose, commanded one of the guards. I am Officer Penelope Popova of the Edo Police Precinct. I have come to see Agent Chifu Kano Yuno. The guard on the right opened the door. 3rd floor, said the other guard. Office 23. Penelope bowed. Thank you, she said. A few minutes later, Penelope stood in front of Kana's polished, 10-foot tall wooden door. She knocked. Enter, said a woman's commanding voice. Penelope slid the door open. The back of an intermediate female faced Penelope with a lovely head of curvy mauve hair, so thick and long that it could have completely draped over Penelope. The woman rose to her feet and turned to her face. After a brief pause, she walked around the wooden desk with a floating, regal air. Penelope was not used to seeing so many Sugois at once, let alone so massive, and was a little troubled with their intermediate's imposing approach. The woman stopped in front of Penelope, ready to receive a short bow. Agent Chifu Kano Yuno. Penelope bowed. Officer Penelope Popova, greeted Kana. Straightening, Penelope looked up to Kana's full height of 8 feet and 10 inches. Her wide, sculpted face appeared to be Kunian, with skin a couple of shades darker than Penelope's. She was dressed in a black cloth, sleeveless gi and bandages. The agent's large onyx eyes stared back at her, portraying a look of intrigue as she caressed a silver charm around her long, muscular neck. The Sugoi Smasher, said Kana. Penelope raised her hairless brow. First time you've ever heard that? Asked Kana. Penelope remained silent. You'll have a chance to affirm that name rather soon, Popova. I'll take you to the showers, where you can change. After that, we'll go into the gymnasium to meet your new partners. Several minutes later, Penelope, dressed in her dark brown sleeveless shirt, leather gloves, and hakama, entered the blue matted gym with Kana. 2 Kunian women, who were of basic height and wearing the same kind of charm as Kana, stood against the wall behind them. Penelope, however, quickly made note of their Sugoi qualities. Both women were pale and had long, thick black hair. Beneath the bangs of one were a pair of wide, orange-lit eyes. The bangs of one were a pair of excuse me. Sorry, guys, I got lost. So I'm reading it again. Beneath the bangs of one were a pair of wide, orange-lit eyes, the clear traits of an elemental Sugoi. The other's hair stood over a foot above her head with a scalp that stretched inches. The other's hair stood over a foot above her head with a sculpt that stretched 6 inches past her shoulders and down to her heels. They're clear traits of a follicle Sugoi. Penelope and Kana stopped in front of them. Agent Popova, said Kana. These are Agents Homura, Aikawa, and Chika Goya. Aikawa and Goya meet Penelope Popova. Penelope bowed. As she straightened, she met Homura's defiant gaze. The agent declined to bow, while Chika bowed with hesitance. There's been a debate as to who would accept the role of commander in light of Agent Hagano's death. I told them it would be settled once we were back in full force. Today, you will prove yourself Sugoi Smasher, or just another lowly ambitious. Today, you will prove yourself a Sugoi Smasher, or just another lowly ambitious basic who will soon learn her place. You will engage in mutual combat with them. Chifu Yuno. Penelope glanced at her new boss, questions on her face. You will fight them one at a time, just like you did with those Sugois of the banks. Penelope frowned. Permission to speak freely. You may. Fighting Sugois of the bangs was a matter of life and death. I dealt with them because I had to. I refused to put myself in harm's way to prove myself to you and your agents. Life and death, Popova? Kana nodded to Chika. The follicle extended 3 strands. Sorry, guys, I had to pause for a little bit. So, back from where I left off. Kana nodded to Chika. The follicle extended 3 strands of her hair like vines and used them to grasp 3 rubber-sleeved wooden swords from the rack a few feet away. This is the Imperial Guard, not a den of barbarians. And as far as your harm's way concern goes, my girls reserve lethal force for only criminals. Kana held out a rubber blade to her. Popova. Now take arms or get out. Penelope sought the Lord in her heart, over whether she should fight or refrain. The Lord compelled her to fight. Realizing why, she looked up to Kana. I am known as Sugoi Smasher, Agent Chiefo Yuno. I just worship the God who is one. Your girl's defeat will be to his glory. Penelope took hold of the sword. Kana's reply revealed nothing of what she thought. Chika handed another blade to Homura and took the remaining one in her hand. The elemental smirked, grasping her blade. Homura has been chomping at the bit to be commander. She's looking to fight you first. Both Kana and Chika backed away. A male Sugoi covered from head to toe standing in the entrance of the male locker room caught Penelope's attention. He appeared to be a couple of feet taller than Kana. Even his face is covered, she thought. Fight! Exclaimed Kana. Excuse me. Penelope immediately returned her gaze to Homura. Let's make this quick, said Homura. Several swarms of gnat-like particles emerged from the pores of the elemental's exposed skin and clothes. Here comes those neurons, thought Penelope. They sparked and ignited, engulfing the elemental in a red flame. Boom! Shouted Homura. Homura lunged at her, taking a couple of strikes. Penelope repelled them all. The movements were more of a goading than intended attacks. Homura advanced with each strike, making Penelope's face feel like it was being yanked away from a burning oven, only to be shoved into it again. Homura then blitzed her with a horizontal slash. Penelope blocked it, but the elemental did not remove her sword from Penelope's. Homura grinned, leaning her flame-shrouded face closer to hers. Sweat poured down Penelope's head and forearms. Feeling comfortable, Basic? Jeered Homura. As comfortable as any woman would be by finding another's possible burning attraction. Homura's eyes opened like a baby bird's mouth. Burning attraction! The elemental's eyes widened The elemental's eyes turned white with rage. That got her. She'll be losing control in 3, 2, Wah! Screamed the elemental. Penelope put her foot on her opponent's abdomen, kicking herself away from Homura. The elemental burst into a white flame with a force that threw Penelope several yards away. Homura, no! Yelled Kana. Sliding to a stop on her knees, Penelope looked up. Her opponent hovered nearly a foot off the ground, glowing in white fire. Homura's surge sounded like a jet engine gathering thrust, rubbling the floor underneath her. Do I amuse you? That's right, hot little hornet. Fly to me, thought Penelope. Kana raced toward Homura, screaming for help to stop, but the fiery woman took off like a cannon round before she could catch her. Penelope ran toward her opponent, and within seconds of contact, closed her eyes against Homura's flare and slid onto her knees. As the immense heat of Homura's body nearly passed over her face, Penelope turned her head away and grabbed her opponent by her sleeveless gi. When she opened her eyes, she was pleased to see her pull had yanked the elemental out of her fire, sending it flying past her. Using her opponent's own centripetal force, Penelope spun Homura around in midair and slammed her onto the mat. Excuse me. She frantically flapped her hands to shake off her scorched gloves. Oh! She moaned with the pain. She blew in her blistered hands, then grasped her pants. She walked over to the comatose Homura, who still breathed. Excuse me, guys. I doubt we'll be friends when she wakes up, thought Penelope. Whap! Penelope leaped over a large strand of hair as it slapped the floor beside her. Landing on her feet, she was bedazzled by by a long lock rejoining the millions of stimulated black follicles on Chica's head. Her new opponent flung another of her strands at her. Penelope bent away with a Penelope bent away with a backstanding flip, barely dodging the hair's whip-cracked strike at her face. That was extremely accurate, thought Penelope. Penelope tumbled over to her sword. She was barely back on her feet when Chica struck at her with another strand. This one got so close, it dug into the locks of her platinum strands beside her right cheek, cutting off a couple of dry hairs. Come on, girl. Take the bait, thought Penelope. Penelope held up her sword like a protective bar for her face and charged toward Chica. Within seconds, Chica's hair latched onto the sword. Thank you, Emmanuel, prayed Penelope in her heart. Penelope held onto the sword as Chica pulled it. As she'd hoped, the force was strong enough to send her flying towards her wide-eyed follicle. Chica shielded her face with her hair, leaving her chest exposed, which was exactly what Penelope had planned. She kneed Chica in the sternum, taking the wind out of her. The follicle's immense hair absorbed the impact of her fall. Penelope went over and examined her. She was relieved to see she was asleep, but alive, and that her neck and chest were sound. I told you Emmanuel was the real Sugoi smasher, said Penelope, straightening. I'm just an available vessel at his disposal. Kana looked amazed. Indeed he is. Glancing down, her eyes bulged. Goodness! I'll get you some wraps and ice packs for your hands. Penelope heard applause from afar. Both she and Kana looked to the fully garbed, clapping man coming their way. The giant man stopped in front of Penelope as Kana headed for the woman's locker room. He gave her a bow. Well done, Popova, said the giant man. Penelope squinted. He pulled a scarf from his face and removed his sunglasses. Her eyes widened. Agent Yanahara, said Penelope. Yudo. Please call me Yudo. Yuto. I'm honored you're here, Agent Popova. Call me Penelope. She clasped her hand over her mouth. Yudo chuckled. Penelope, he said. Some other time. He spotted Kana coming back into the gym. Kana, he called. Yudo, acknowledged Kana, as she returned with ice packs and wraps. Yudo put his shades back on and covered his vein-webbed face. He walked back to the men's locker room. You've known him for 2 minutes. Kana wrapped the packs with plastic wrap around Penelope's blistered hands. And both of you are on a first-name basis? By the grace of God. Her tender blisters blaze at the touch of the soaked, frigid ice bags. I almost didn't get to know his first name. I do not condone Hamaro's actions. I know. But you condone Chica bullwhipping her hair at my face. Those lashes wouldn't have been lethal. If anything, they would have drawn blood, or split open my scalp, or blinded me. She almost deafened my right ear. Kana shook her head. I don't know much about your god, Popova, but I have heard he's a forgiving one. Kana kneeled on one knee. The gesture was enough to raise one of Penelope's hairless brows. I give you my word, continued Kana, that my agents will never use lethal or damaging force on you again. You leaving here would place me in a hard light with the Shogun. With today's misgivings, it would be well deserved. Penelope nodded. I forgive you. Folks, that ends episode 2. Again, if you guys wish to purchase Penelope, just look on the link in my description. Click on it. They'll take you to my author page, and there you can buy it both digitally or physically. and you can purchase other books that I've put on there. You guys like the content? Hit like and hit subscribe and hit the bell so you can be notified when it drops again. Again, thank you, thank you guys for tuning in, and God bless. Till next time.